us started. If everybody's ready, welcome to another edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. Today we have with us Senator Arnie Roblan, outgoing Senator Arnie Roblan, but still Senator Arnie Roblan for now. We have Mayor Scott Hill from the city of McMinnville. We have Council President Kelly Minke from the city of McMinnville. We have Mayor Michael Cape from Amity, outgoing, soon to not be. And he gives us the thumbs up. We have Representative Ron Noble. Welcome back. We have Takesha Wydro from Sheridan Revitalization Committee. And we have Joya Goodrum from the McMinnville Chamber of Commerce. And thank you all for joining us today. As you saw in the email, this is actually at Mayor Scott Hill's suggestion, is that we're going to talk about COVID and then we're going to talk about housing. And we'll get to the housing thing in a little bit. But with that, I would love to hear from Senator Roblan to start us off. What would you like to tell people of Yamhill County today?
Yeah, the big thing next week, we begin legislative days. The Senate is up next week, and the following week, it's the House that will be on track. On Friday of next week, we have the latest in our, 12th, 13th, 14th e-board meeting. So we will be making some decisions with regard to finding what money hasn't been spent and brought back so that we can get it spent before the deadline of the last this month. So we have to we have to get it back, and then we have to reallocate it fairly quickly so that we can get it spent before that time. So counties should expect, I hope, a little bit more money, and some other business associates as well. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. We haven't seen an agenda yet. There still are rumors and conversations going on about a special session. It would be a catastrophic special session, which means we could do it by virtual. So there's ways to do that. And just because we'll have a great topic later, the number one issue has to do with housing and whether or not there is some money the state can put into extending benefits for people, because we know if the federal government doesn't extend some benefits, there's a lot of people at the end of the month that are going to be in real world of hurt. So we're looking at that. I know that there's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. There's also people who say, just wait, the new session starts in February. The problem with that is that the new session starts in February, but much of the action it's taken doesn't happen until 90 days after it gets over, which is in February. So that's almost a year away. So it's important to have those conversations and decide what needs to be done emergency-wise and whatever. And I'll leave it to the other people. I don't get a say in those decisions, but I get to participate if they make the decision. So look forward to whatever happens there. That's pretty much it, though. We had a really nice couple conversations this morning with the medical group that I've been on for the governor, talking about all the different things and listening to different groups that have been impacted much more difficultly than the general population, and what we should be thinking about and doing with them. Also, North Coast Economic Region conversation this morning about the new requirements that the state has put on with respect to these new statewide restrictions and the county rating system. So we got to hear a little bit more about that. And then as soon as this meeting gets over at 2:00 today, there is a government to government annual meeting between the governor's office and the 9 tribes of Oregon. It takes place once a year to talk about the issues that are related to tribes and the state and their sovereignty and how those things interrelate. Starts from 2 to 5 tonight, and again tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 11:30. So a lot of conversations going on there, and I look forward to that meeting as well. So another important and big Zoom day for me. So thank you.
And are there questions for Senator Roblan? So I've heard some things, Senator, the folks talking about, I guess, extending the housing moratorium, the eviction moratorium. So you touched on that a little bit. Is that something that can be done in a catastrophic session, or is that something that isn't really appropriate to that? Because it ends.
depends on what you bring it in for. So it's related to whatever the governor decides to call it for. So if she calls it on a COVID response and includes in that COVID response housing for people that are affected and so on, the answer is yes, that could be it. So how she writes the bringing us back, that whole response to it, how she states it determines what we can talk about. So that is another big part of that whole thing.
Okay, that sounds good. And then I've seen the number 100 million being kind of thrown around. And is that specific to extending unemployment benefits, or is that for housing and landlords?
That's for rental assistance and landlords. And we recognize that it's about 100 million short, but we don't have a whole lot of resources. And unlike me, there are people on this phone call that have to go into a session in a very short period of time because they did get reelected, chose to, and they're going to have to figure out what a budget looks like given the ramifications of the coronavirus and how it's affected us, and especially with more of these closures. Again, our economy is going to take another hit, and that means that they're going to have to figure out how to make a balanced budget required by law and Constitution, given the circumstances. And so $100 million is a lot of money given how much they've already lost and what they're going to have to deal with over the next few months. So I don't envy them those tough decisions.
I'm looking at you, Representative Noble, who has unmuted himself, I'd like to add. Before we move on to Representative Noble, because I do want to make sure that he gets a chance to respond to some of these things. Are there any other questions for Senator Roblan? And in that, I'm hearing in my head, like, Abisha, any questions? Okay, it doesn't sound like, oh, she unmuted herself.
Okay.
Representative Noble, what would you like to add to the conversation there, and what would you like to tell people in the community?
I very much appreciate Senator Roblan's summary, because I was able to check off several things on my list, which is great. And yeah, I would just mention that the governor right now, as we're speaking, is having a press conference to talk about her budget and releasing her budget proposal. So we'll have a much better idea how we can come together to work through some of the issues and deal with not only COVID, our response to COVID and the economics there, but also wildfire recovery and some of the other issues we've dealt with. So we'll take a look at that. When this is done, I know what my afternoon is going to be like. Yeah, the senator mentioned that we have legislative days coming up starting next week for the next 2 weeks. And there's been a whole host of things. I apologize for not being able to make it the last few weeks, but I've been in touch with you, Commissioner, and letting you know I've been busy with a bunch of other task forces and work groups and getting ready for this next session. Not only do we have a response to COVID, but we're still working on the Santiam Canyon wildfire recovery team that you joined me on, and ensuring not only the rebuilding and the infrastructure of Santiam Canyon, but how it applies to the rest of the state. Some of the other things that I know that we're preparing for the legislative session is I'm on a police policy committee with the Criminal Justice Commission. And we've been working on for the past year, kind of looking at Oregon's security release issues and how that is equitable among different levels of economic status, persons of color, and other issues across our state, and ensuring that we have a way to safely protect our community, but also to ensure people are treated fairly and equitable. That's one. I expect legislation regarding that. I expect legislation coming out of our work group to decriminalize mental illness, which also provides supports and help for people experiencing behavioral health issues. You know, speaking as somebody who's been in law enforcement for quite a while, those people don't belong in the criminal justice system. And really, it's a matter of providing supports in our society and our communities to deal with those issues, as opposed to having them, again, fill our jails, which is not appropriate and doesn't do anybody any good. We also have finishing up, hopefully, some work on the governor's task force on police training. And with eventually, I don't know what the process is, where we are in hiring a new director for the Oregon Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, our police academy and fire academy. But I'm sure that it will coincide in some new things that we're pushing towards as far as police training. Again, another police one would be the Joint Committee on Police Transparency. And I expect the work there to be passed along to the judiciary committees in both the House and the Senate. And then last week, I met during this time talking about the I-5 bridge and some of the things that we need to do, some of the progress we're making, and dealing with our connection and some older bridges that are really beginning to fail. We had to put quite a bit of money into one of the bridges this year, and it's just going to be the maintenance is going to kill us. We have some bottlenecks on I-5 you may be aware of if you've driven on I-5 at all. Not just one, we've got several. So trying to figure out how to best move forward in this process. We had House Bill 2015 a couple of years ago that we still need to work through. But we, of course, have some revenue challenges potentially. So we want to maintain our infrastructure and not stop, continue building where we can, but being respectful of some of the other issues in our society and the impacts of transportation along that I-5 corridor. So, it's all of that with the background of COVID and our response to COVID, and then the devastating wildfires. We're staying busy, and as the senator, he will be missed. I kind of wish he was going to be back, but we've got a time ahead of us in the legislature. I was talking to the speaker this morning, where I expect the judiciary committees, the human services committee, and healthcare committees to be really engaged. And a lot of the hot topics will come through those committees this year regarding policy, and then of course, in those areas and in ways and means and revenue and expenditures.
Great, thank you very much, Representative Noble. Are there questions or comments? Did Representative Noble spark anything for you? Councilor Menke.
I just wanted to ask, obviously we're going to have funding for this mental health issue, and as I understand it, a lot of it's going to be coming out of marijuana and liquor taxes. Is that correct?
Well, that's there on Measure 110 actually has taken some lottery dollars and reallocated them towards addiction recovery and behavioral issues, yes.
That will be on the agenda for the Mental Health Committee, an update on 110. So if you want to know more, you can go online to OLIS and watch next week. I think it's on Wednesday morning, 8:30. We will have a couple updates on some of those initiatives that came through and what we're planning on doing. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you a lot. I was just curious, though, and I know this is ridiculous to say, but I just want to ask anyway. The whole issue is treating mental health and treating drug and addiction issues. Great idea. Theoretically, it's supposed to reduce policing costs, but we all know that's probably not going to happen. I kind of want to put that out there and say, is there any thought for this discussion down the road, though, if we actually get it in place?
I'm going to speak as I watched in my law enforcement career. I watched the institutions empty. And rightfully so. That was not the right place we don't need to warehouse people, but we put them in the community without support and without systems in place. And so the default became law enforcement and hospitals and emergency rooms, and stressing any other behavioral health or any type of caring nonprofit or agency that was out there. And I think, at least my approach is, Counselor, I can talk specifically to McMinnville at a point. I know that when I was your police chief, I'd say it this way. We were one of the most efficient police departments in the state when you look at number of officers per thousands of people. There were only 2 agencies in the state that had a ratio quite like ours, and that was the other agency I worked for in Corvallis. Both of them were on the lower end of officers per thousand. Which really meant that we had to prioritize work, and some work didn't get done. So I I guess I would just be careful about the savings as much as looking at what we can do for people and keep them out of the system. And the savings will be realized at some point. We need to provide the support for people experiencing, especially now with all of the stress, the health stress. I've got a friend who lost his mother this last week due to COVID after she caught COVID in a hospital. When she went in for an emergency procedure. So, there's a lot of anxiety there, and we're going to have to increase our supports there so that people don't. Well, it ends up snowballing. You know that. So I think we need to provide those supports. Addiction recovery the same way. It's hard to quantify the dollars, but we can quantify people and talk about what it does for families. In long term, I mean, ideally we'd be providing support to the next generation. So at some point, maybe we wouldn't need law enforcement or we wouldn't need addiction recovery. Maybe, 2 or 3 generations down the road, people would finally be able to fix the issues that we haven't been able to address. Now, that may sound a little bit Pollyannish, but I think it's something we need to strive for.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, Ron.
we have we were one of a few states that got some federal money to do some CCHBCs, which happen to do with behavioral health. I went out and visited one in Baker City. They have not sent anybody from that county to the state hospital since they've had the HBCs because they have local stuff. They actually, the organization actually bought a ranch and they have people out working on the ranch as part of their recovery. And they have both secure facilities and others in their local community, but they mostly house people from all over the state because they have been so successful in doing it in their own. So I think there are some models out there that do exactly what Ron is talking about, get the community engaged and involved in helping these people become more productive citizens. And so it was interesting to watch. And as I sat with one group and one of the young people was going to be heading back home, actually was going to go back to live with his mother, but they thought they had him pretty well stabilized. And in his conversation, he explained what he needed to do and how he needed to do it. So it appeared that he was ready and they felt that he was ready to go back to the community. So what we need to do is make sure that some of those resources go to the right places so that people get what they need as opposed to being locked away in an emergency room or in a jail. So that's my hope.
Oh, I think it's everybody's hope. I'm so for this. I just really hope that it all works out.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
And it looks
Both
like
of you. I'm sorry you're leaving, Senator Roblan.
Oh, thanks.
We'll be sure to get Mayor Anderson on here, though.
That's right.
Joya has a question.
I do. Thank you so much. On this same sort of tack, the measure that passed recently to not criminalize the possession of drugs, because we're not incarcerating people, because that's a huge expense, would there be monies coming from not incarcerating people to help them with their drug addictions and the mental health issue?
That's the hope. And we assume that it can, though there is always a lag between when the money comes available and when the money is needed. So it's going to be difficult on local communities. I mean, that's just the basic statement. You know, I had a number of friends who were judges who basically said, right now, the only reason we get them to go to get treatment is because we hold over them that they might go to jail. And now we're not going to have that tool any longer. So will they go get the help they need? The question is, if we have programs that are the right programs and they fit, they will. But we don't have that many programs right now. So figuring out how to get that all together at the same time is going to be a difficult challenge, in my opinion.
So a second question, did the passage of this measure actually cause the problem to become worse? Or could it potentially make the problem worse?
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, the reality is in individual places it could, in other places it might be the answer to the problem and you might get it solved. So you're going to have to wait and see and watch it play out. Clearly, the people of Oregon decided that's what they wanted to do.
And I'll follow up with this one, but I want to make sure that Abisha gets her question or comment filled.
Thanks, everyone. This is a really interesting conversation and one that I've had personal interest in for a long time. I'm actually a DPSST graduate myself, Representative Noble, back when the facility was in Monmouth. So don't tell everybody how long ago that was because they'll start guessing my age.
That's what I went through.
Good. And my experience was not like yours. I was a 911 dispatcher and operator, so I went through the emergency communications course. That said, I put my voice in this just to urge folks to consider the fact that the majority of our emergency services have been under-supported in ways that we're not aware of, right? So insufficient systems, insufficient tools to do the jobs correctly. And so when we start actualizing, and I hope that that is the case, when we start actualizing the impact of cost savings, I would hope and urge everyone to consider supporting these sorts of services in the ways that they need to be supported before deferring funds to other programs. I do agree and believe deeply that support services to help people with mental health issues and addiction issues will decrease the burden from 911 calls. Trust me, this I'm aware of. And also kind of the work of the folks that have boots on the ground. But it is really important that we identify and take advantage of the opportunities to improve the systems, improve the training, improve the tools and technology, and make sure that the work that we are committing to is appropriately staffed before we start deferring funds elsewhere. That's how we'll make sure that the three legs of this stool are balanced and secure. And I just had to say that. I'm sorry, no questions in that. It's just something close to my heart.
We haven't done very well with that in the past, but I hope that I hope Ron and the next crew will do a better job.
I very much appreciate that. I wasn't in the legislature, but I was involved in part of Justice Reinvestment back in 2015.
That was the one.
And even though we've had some successes, and Yamhill County is one of those, statewide, it probably is a little disappointing to me in what has been missing in the reinvestment. As Councilor Menke, you brought up Measure 110, and I've got a list. I got an email this morning, a list of 24 items that people have questions about. How do we, in this new environment of this measure, with in how we're dealing with some of these drugs, how do we then move forward? Because I think the legislature is going to have to come in with some supports in this new idea, this new system, this new look as to still how do we do it. And one of those is what the senator was saying, is that there's no penalty anymore. There's no way to get people into treatment that don't want treatment. And that's just one thing. There are several items where right now laws may conflict regarding school zones and possession. And so we're going to have to take a look at how these all fit in together and ensure that we're complying with the will of the people, and yet still in facilitating that to work out best.
Such great questions about this. And I would like to note that Jody Hansen, who runs Remnant Initiatives based out of Newburgh, and who is on this email chain for invitees, I will be sure to invite her to next week's because she's on the Citizens Implementation Coalition or whatever for Measure 110, in addition to running the reentry program that is Remnant Initiatives. So she has a particular viewpoint that probably none of us have. And since I didn't know about Abisha's past, I just say probably. The one question I wanted to ask originally, which then forked into lots of other questions, is there was an article in the Oregonian about the budget process that is coming, and the not closing the two small prisons, one of which is in Senator Roblan's district, the state prisons. And I forget the names, but you know the one that's in your district. And I'm curious about whether there's, I'm curious about whether there is an opportunity here, because one of the big challenges is, of course, your communities really rely upon those very good jobs. that the prison generates. And I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to relook at what those spaces are used for in light of Measure 110 and other kind of moves to reduce prison populations when we can. Do you have thoughts on that, Senator and Representative?
The problem with both of the facilities, the other one's over in Eastern Oregon, they aren't in the best of shape. Shutter Creek was a military facility, a radar station for a long time before it was turned into the non-secure prison, the kind of work study prisons that it is. And it's done really well with the people who have been there. They've been successful, though it was the first outbreak in our community was at Shutter Creek. The reality is I would think it would take a lot of refurbing. And I can't expect that as time goes on, we will need those facilities. I was happy to keep it going at least while I was here because it does have a big impact on us, our community, with respect to jobs and other kinds of things. Those prisoners did a lot of work in our community. I mean, they were out doing stuff all the time, which was another positive in our local community. But yeah, it's going to be, it would take a lot of money to fix them up, and it might be better to use it in other places. Both of them are isolated. One's up in Coos Bay, it's up on a hill away from everybody else. So that's not necessarily the best place to integrate them into a community, but that's what I have to say.
And Representative Noble may have to make that decision, so.
That's right, exactly. And I know he'll do a good job.
Well, I trust him on that one, so.
There we go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And Representative Noble, I think at least a couple of us here on the call have signed a letter urging the governor to put money in her budget for phase 2 of the Newburgh-Dundee regional bypass, just to put a little bit more legislative action your way, right, Mayor Hill? Yeah.
So true.
So I know that she, her last budget in 2019 included money in phase 2, and it didn't make it into the final budget. So I would be supportive of that as long as we're still able to deal with a lot of the other issues that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think everybody realizes. Today, we're going to get the governor's budget, but that is not the final budget. That's Ways and Means and all that other process. So it's her dream team, and she doesn't have to have a balanced one. She can make up revenue and do whatever she wants to come up with a budget. We don't get that luxury in the legislature, and Ron will have to have the hard conversations that get reality to a budget that is going to have to get passed.
I'm here.
Absolutely.
Going to have to in this meeting today.
That's right. Okay, well, thank you for those thoughts. Are there any other questions for Senator Roblan or Representative Noble? All right, thank you. I really appreciate it. Mayor Hill, what would you like to share with the community today?
Thank you, commissioners, and Senator Roblan. Again, we are going to miss you. You've become a fixture on our calls here in Yamhill County. So thank you, and wish the very best to you. And we'll continue to work where we need to be working here in the county. I think I'm going to bridge both gaps, Casey, talking a little bit about the city, and then maybe jumping over to some of our homeless issues, and in that we're kind of local from that perspective. First thing is, as we know that the county has increased COVID results, which put us with everyone else in the freeze. And, I've talked to the Downtown Association, and there's real concerns out there, especially with the restaurants, of their continued limited ability to serve customers. I think Jeb Bladine in the News Register this weekend talked a little bit about how critical it is to shop local as we're getting into the holidays. We rely so very much on our local buying and these very unique shops that we have in McMinnville and Newburgh and Dundee and Dayton and Amity. So again, I would just reiterate the thought that, support your local economies. It becomes so critical. We're going to have a 2021 where we're going to be doing business relief and helping as much as we can. But the holidays is a way to get started on that. Again, I will reiterate the thoughts of mask washing and social distancing. We've got to get those numbers down so that we can give some ability for the county to come out of the level that we're at right now. The other thing that I'd like to share is, as many of you know, this evening is the first of 3 public hearings that McMinnville is going to be having on the UGB on the remand. And so public hearings starting at 6 o'clock tonight and Wednesday night and Thursday night, giving plenty of time for citizens to weigh in on this process. And so I would just ask anyone that would like to weigh in on the UGB discussion. They're going to have their opportunity. The next thing is, I know we've had a tremendous uptick in homelessness, vehicles, cars, getting outside of on the sidewalks and on the parking area in the area of 13th and Baker. And we have been policing that area and talking to the individuals. It's very close to where the Champion team has had their office. And as of this morning, all vehicles are no longer there, either towed or under the feeling that they were going to be towed, they are all gone. And so that neighborhood is gotten maybe their streets back a little bit. We know that our officer that's assigned to the homeless group is going to be starting his morning out every day in that location and just working through the areas that need to have happen. I know our counselors, at least in McMinnville, have had a number of conversations with not only the residents, but also with the businesses in that area. So again, I saw a picture this morning and it showed that the streets were clean. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a couple of other, well, let me go, we talked about Measure 110, and last week we had an opportunity to have the League of Oregon Cities had their regional call for our area, Polk, Marion, and Yamhill counties, and we talked about Measure 10, and for those that want to weigh in at a local level, the LOC becomes our advocate with our legislative advocacy program that we have. And so we talked a little bit about, funds being, as Councillor Menke talked about, some of those funds maybe coming away from the shared state revenue process, and LOCs on top of that. But again, it's a process that we need to work through. So I just let us all know that LOC is an advocate for us at the local area. Next Wednesday morning, we're going to have a special meeting on the Newburgh-Dundee bypass with the OTC and members of ODOT. We're just talking about phase to the finish, and we're seeing a lot of good work that's happening. We've seen preliminary design. We've seen how we could possibly connect Dundee and at the fish hook into a expanded phase 3. And so again, I'll report to you after we've had that meeting. There's just a select few of us that are going to be meeting with the OTC, the chair, Ben Brocklin, and with the higher ups at ODOT on there. So again, I'm going to set a couple people up for discussions because I think they're in a better shape to do this. Casey, I know that you're on the board of the champion team, and at some point it might be well, just to let people know from a homelessness standpoint where we're sitting. But I spent an hour and a half this morning with Alexandra from YCAP as we kind of were going over some of the things that are happening there. And she will endeavor to make these meetings every other week as it talks about homelessness and the Yamhill Roundtable on homelessness to be a part of that. She just had commitments today, but we had good discussions about moving forward and some of the things from that perspective. And then I'm going to set Remy or Kelly up to talk about ROs and a discussion that we had last week as it relates to housing and some innovative things that we're talking about in McMinnville. But again, that comes into homelessness and affordable housing and some of the things. But with Remy being the chair and Council President Menke being the co-chair, they're probably it's a good time to give them a topic to talk about on this call. So those are the things that I had for McMinnville this morning.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your leadership. Joya, you have a question.
Thank you, I do. Mayor, thank you for your update. So is Champion Team gone?
And
they're not functioning anymore?
We'll have Casey talk about, because he sits on the board and he can go into as much as he can share at this point. I don't know how much I can share or not share, so I think that's why I've kind of pushed it over to him.
Okay, no, I just want to find out where, if they're not doing this work anymore, who is? And if I understood correctly, I heard it might be YCAP.
I wouldn't say it's going to be YCAP.
Okay.
But again, Commissioner, why don't you talk to him just a little bit about the champion team where we sit?
Okay, thank you. So, if this is taking a left turn, we can have a conversation another time.
I think this is exactly about where we want to, on these every other week meetings, talk. We want to get back to a point where we have this Yamhill Housing Coalition and these discussions, because we've been away from that for almost 9 to 10 months now, and I think we've lost some traction, and we had some really good discussions going on before COVID hit us. And again, I think in this new world, we need to be focused on COVID, but at the same time, we've got issues out there, and this is the only forum from a county standpoint that we can talk and move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so real quick though, Councillor Drabkin turned on her video and unmuted herself for a moment, so I just want to give her an opportunity to maybe add.
Thank you, Commissioner. I am also fine with you giving 100% of the champion team update. I think the only thing I was going to add was that, and this could be out of date because it's as of last Wednesday, is that they are still seeking donations to continue on for a little bit longer. But then in terms of everything else, I will pretend like this mask actually mutes me.
And Remy, I can talk about that a little bit. Is they've had 2 sources of revenue coming in that are going to take them at least through the month of December. And I talked to the 2 sources this week, so I can say with real solid information that there have been 2 sources that have stepped up to help them at least get through the month of December.
Yeah, so, okay, but let's see. For those of you on the call and those of you listening in the rest of the world in a little bit, Champion Team is Yamhill County's only drop-in center that's open 7 days a week for folks who are homeless, experiencing severe mental illness or addiction issues. It's a peer support facility where you can warm up, you can charge your phone, you can get your mail. And over the past, really, since about when COVID hit, there have been lots of challenges there because like many nonprofits, especially peer support ones, where you have people running nonprofits who maybe are not the people who have the experience running nonprofits, issues get dropped, reporting gets dropped, and strain shows in operations. And that's what happened at Champion Team. Right now, we have an interim executive director in Howie Harkema. And we, though the champion team had almost their entire source of revenue for doing their work was through a contract with Yamhill County Health and Human Services. Because reporting requirements weren't happening, that contract was canceled, was terminated. And what that means is that to keep this going and to provide a space that's, to be honest, out of downtown, where people have a safe place to be and can find some level of stability, we need to have some continued ongoing expenses covered in order to keep that operating. And First Federal stepped up and provided $5,000, so about half of 1 month's operating expenses for the facility, for the staff and the leadership team there. Springboard Group, which is the Austin families, one of their philanthropy outlets, has also stepped up and provided another $5,000, as well as a community member who is sometimes shy about telling people that he's given money to things. So we do have December's operating expenses covered. Really what Champion Team is aiming for is enough money to get through the winter, so that we have a place for people, because it's expected that it's going to be a record cold, wet winter. And then the board of directors is looking for a long-term solution, and that may be moving from their location to a different location, because as Mayor Hill noted, there are challenges around having folks congregating, right? So we've had to implement real strict rules about when you can be there and when you can't, for example. But so long-term, a better space that doesn't impact neighbors as much, and long-term funding is really the two things. Once we get over the hurdle of getting all the regulations and requirements dealt with as a nonprofit. That's kind of a long answer, but hopefully it helps you, Joya, understanding a little bit more of their situation. Super. And really, like, as you can tell, there are a lot of people who are on this call who are involved in some aspect, talking about it, helping it. I mean, from Representative Noble to Mayor Hill to Councilor Menke, Councilor Drabkin, all the way around, and even you. So, other thoughts or questions about that?
I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear the Champion Team is not disappearing quite yet, because it was the only resource. And that is really important in our community. So thank you.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'm so glad that First Federal stepped up and was willing to contribute to that effort too. That really, we were ready, and you know, sometimes I wander into too much disclosure or not enough, but we were really ready to say, okay, we're done. December 1st, we got to close the doors. And so it's wonderful to know that there will be a space ongoing for people. Councilor Drabkin. Oh, okay, she turned on her video again. You know, it's the new unmute yourself.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm out of step with COVID etiquette or Zoom etiquette. So
absolutely.
I was anticipating.
I learned recently that
is what was happening. I was anticipating a question, so I unmuted anyways. I now I know it's the new unmute. I got it.
I learned recently that leadership is sending out the Zoom link. You know, it's a low bar. But along those lines, I'd love to hear from Councilor Menke what she has to share with people, but also as much information as you can share about YCAP, being as you're on the board.
For as much good as it does me. Actually, they're in final interviews, from what I understand, for a new finance director, which is really exciting because they got that far about a month ago, and then the person backed out at the last minute, which was very unsettling. But it's looking good. It looks like they're on the crest of having a new finance director. They have funding for the moteling program through April. I got that as confirmed number from Alexandra today. They're just going like crazy. The fire last night that happened at the hotel down on Baker Street is keeping them extremely busy today, and that's why she isn't here today, but she will be next week, as Scott has said. I wish I could give you a whole lot more information. They seem to be doing very well with grant dollars, and that's a very positive thing. But obviously, the finance position's been kind of an issue. They've had a very good person in there doing interim work, but in between it, it'd be nice to get that settled. And I think she might have more time then if that was done. They've hired, they're doing a lot of outreach, but they're very careful to keep their people, for the most part, if they can do a Zoom or on phones or something like that, they try not to do things in person. And anydoor.yamhill.com is a very important email address to keep in mind if anybody needs housing, rental assistance, weatherization assistance, food assistance, do that.
Kelly, I'll just indicate also in talking to Alexandra this morning, they're really working hard of being able to look at any grant dollars that they have available. And
they are. They've done a fabulous job getting grants this year. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars.
But they need to have that wrapped up by the end of the year. So they're reaching out and doing everything they can. I know they've been working and trying to work with the Yamhill Gospel Rescue Mission and some of those types of things and some of the parameters that the mission puts on those that are using that facility. But they are just doing phenomenal work right now.
They are. They're very, very busy too. So. I think they're doing excellent work. Alexandra just got a very good review from the board too, I might add. So.
All right, thank you very much. And before I'm gonna segue into economic development and business support here in just a moment. But it does seem totally crazy that all these funding sources, we have to rush to the finish line, use them, knowing that they're going to go away magically at the end of the calendar, which is just an arbitrary thing that we put on our wall. And I would really like to see an extension of a lot of these benefits. I know that a number of people here support that, but it is really hard to be in this position, seeing funding just dry up for unemployment, to have spend money by the end of the year. So soapbox over. But with that, both Joya and Abisha need to leave at 2, and both of them have things that I would love to hear them share. So I'm going to go to Abisha first.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I appreciate that comment that leadership is sending Zoom links, because if that's true, I am killing it, because I'm constantly sending those out. So quick updates, I just have 2 updates to offer, and this mostly speaks to the business community. We have, as Commissioner Kula set this up perfectly, been trying very hard to get out these grant programs. So the funds of these grant programs to support businesses before the end of the calendar year. The county, as many of you know, stood up a grant program that closed on November 13th. There have been some delays in processing those applications, but we will have those completely processed this week with recommendations to the Board of Commissioners for funding. So those who have applied, there's been a delay in notification about whether or not you will receive funds, and you should have received an email about that expressing the delay, but you will know very soon whether or not you have been awarded any of those funds. The next round, which was the funds coming out of the governor's $55 million disbursement for business support. We are very grateful in Yamhill County to be receiving just over $1.4 million in those funds. We are also very challenged to get them out. And so the county staff and the commissioners have done, I think, a great job in trying to identify the best approach to distributing these funds and to put together a program. We will have a grant program hosted by the county that will be open. We are targeting the 11th of December. That is a soft target at this point. The Board of Commissioners will be reviewing some information about that program this Thursday, so we will have more information after Thursday. But in order for us to meet our deadline, we really do need to open the program around about the 10th or 11th. So be looking for that time period so that you can apply. We are trying to keep this as simple as possible for our business partners, but certainly we must collect a certain amount of data in order to validate our process. We have to essentially disperse those funds and or at least make commitment to awards before the end of December. Of course, that is very tricky and difficult to do amidst several different holidays. So that said, there will be a program held up. It will be sponsored by the county. You will be able to find that on the county's website under the Economic Development tab. Look for COVID grant program. And you will know whether or not you're being awarded those funds before the end of the year, because we have to know. We have to know. So I'm sharing that now. We're sharing information in bits and pieces, and I recognize that, but it's because of the short amount of time that we have, and we want to make sure that all of our partners get that information out. I appreciate Takesha and Joya, who partner with us very closely to make sure that that information gets marketed to businesses. But as we know, no one of us knows everyone, right? So please make sure that you're sharing this information with all of the business partners. I would like to express to our state folks, and I know I appreciate Senator, that you are not there very much longer, but I know that you have a voice that is respected and heard. And I don't want to keep putting stuff on Rep. Noble's plate, but one of my concerns, of course, with the amount of timing that we all have to make decisions on these funds, is the fact that we don't have an opportunity to stand up programming that provides longer term support for these businesses. And without the ability to have that forward look and time to develop that, then these funds in the hands of business owners is valuable, and it's important to them, and it's meaningful to them. And at the same time, we know that recovery is going to take a lot of work, and it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be driven, and it of course will need to be supported. And so I am hopeful that some amount of funding can be directed towards those efforts. And I'll leave it at that. And I would love to answer questions about ideas if you want to hear mine, because I have plenty, but I'll be done there. Thank you.
Should I be the one to ask it then, Abisha? Which is, I think that's a really good idea, because we know you can give out money. It doesn't go very far, really. And then we don't have anything to really promote our county and our state economy. So what kind of ideas have you thought about in like 2 minutes?
Yep, thank you for asking. So one of the types of programming ideas that we have actually been working to develop a program on at a regional level is a business recovery program that focuses on marketing approach, or just entirely business pivot approach for contacting or marketing to customers. So for example, that would be a business that has a storefront who needs to figure out how to pivot to an online platform, but doesn't have the experience, the knowledge, the wherewithal. As we know, not all business owners are good at all parts of business. So creating some sort of a network of support, or even funding, somebody who can develop those websites and then train folks on how to use those tools. We have also talked about supporting systems and programs for reaching our underserved, rural, women-owned, and BIPOC businesses. With this continued knowledge and understanding that we're not effectively reaching those communities, we would like to develop a structure that can, and that takes work. And we don't have funding or support to develop that work in a way that would be meaningful, and find us next year not having exactly these same conversations we're having this year about our inability to reach those populations. So some of that, we know we have a gap here, and then some of that is our businesses are working hard to try to figure out how to pivot, but when we give them cash in hand, they can pay their bills today. That doesn't allow them to necessarily identify the support to have cash in hand tomorrow.
And Joya, thank you. Joya provides a really good additional suggestion, which is helping businesses with getting them onto websites like Amazon. Real specific, here's how to pivot in a different way. And Shoemates actually is another good example of the Willamette Workforce Partnership providing funding to them to develop an online presence where they had none before. In fact, I noticed they have a new sign even that says shoemates.com. So that's exciting. Okay, thank you for adding those details. And I want to make sure that Joya has an opportunity to add to the conversation before she has to leave too.
Very quickly, interesting that both you and Abisha brought up, Commissioner Kula, brought up about how it would be so nice if we had additional funding coming from the government. Today, I got an email mentioning that there are a group of bipartisan congressional lawmakers that presented a $908 billion package to address small business loans, state and local aid, and unemployment benefits, amongst other things. Doesn't look like the Speaker of the House nor the Senate leadership are interested in the plan, which is really sort of disappointing. Of course, it would look at key economic aid programs, including extending unemployment insurance. I just sent this all out to the membership, so I'm just reading it. It had $288 billion in small business aid, such as PPP loans, $160 billion in state and government relief, local government relief, and $180 million to fund $300 per week supplemental unemployment benefits through March. I think what's the sticking point between the Senate and the House seems to be the fact that the House would like to see $600 a week, and the Senate is not really much interested in that. They also had $45 billion put aside for transportation, which would be wonderful for the bypass, and $16 billion into vaccine distribution and $82 billion into education. So there's lots of potential if this can pass. And it does not include further direct payments to individuals. So we all got our $1,200 checks or whatever that was back a few months ago. The issue that that is also a sticking point is the temporary federal protection from COVID-related lawsuits. The House and Democrats are not interested in that, and Republicans feel that that's a pretty important thing to have in there. Of course, we do not want businesses to have to suffer too much when they are trying to struggle through this, but we also recognize that, people, if they're exposed at work, there needs to be some kind of balance, I suppose. President-elect Biden is working on an economic plan as well as he puts his cabinet together. And lastly, Congress will be meeting to talk about a spending bill, otherwise the government will shut down. And that's going to be on December 11th. And that's all the good news.
Thank you, Joya. And Senator Roblan is waiting, but I don't know whether it's a bye or a hello.
I have to go. I have a 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And thank you, Joya.
I have to go too. Bye all.
Yes. All right. We can come back to mayors now. I just wanted to make sure that we got them before they left us. And with that, Mayor Kate, what would you like to share with people in the community? School, mayor, Amity?
It's cold. If you haven't noticed, it's cold outside, and but we're isn't there a song about that? It's cold outside, but we're still out at the schools delivering the meals and whatnot, and that's what I've been kind of crazy about during this call. I'm sorry I missed some of it. Had a couple incidents come up, and so but at least in Salem Kaiser, we are still planning on delivering our meals all the way through Friday, December 18th. That's when the winter break starts, is technically, I guess, Saturday the 19th. So we'll be delivering those meals all the way up until that time. So far, we have delivered I think the total count is right around 750,000 meals to kids since the start of the school year in the Salem Kaiser School District. That's at schools as well as the bus stop locations that we're doing. So quite a big need there. And as we talk about the economic impacts and how the freeze, how that's ending as we move into the next phase, how is that affecting businesses and whatnot? That's all a big part of it. One of the emails I was just reading is about a daycare facility where they have 63 kids that they want us to start bringing meals to. So because those kids are there because their parents are out of work and trying to find work, and those kids, that's probably their only meals and so we're trying to get that set up and get that started for those kids. So those needs just keep coming in. They keep getting bigger. I had a meeting this morning with my drivers, and that was one of the messages I gave them is, man, sometimes it's easy to kind of lose sight. You get stuck in that monotony, and especially for my drivers, I mean, they're stuck out in the weather, when it's cold and it's raining. They don't necessarily have the heater to keep them warm and all that. But it does warm your heart when you're helping so many people. So, and we're just really in the school district emphasizing the importance of continuing to wear a face mask, follow the guidance that the state has put out. It has changed, ever since March, when we first started. It has changed a lot. And I think that's one of the things people don't realize is pretty much now, unless you're at home or in your own self-contained office space, and you don't have people with you, you really should be wearing your a face covering. If you're outside going for a walk or taking the dog for a walk, you should be wearing a face covering. That's what the guidance says, and that's kind of what we're needing to do. And you see these numbers exploding, and that's why. I know in our school district they've given us some reports, and they're saying the times in the places where we're having exposure issues, it's when people aren't wearing their face coverings, and a lot of times people, they're trying to eat their lunch, and they're like, well, I'm eating my lunch, see, so I can not wear my face covering. But your lunch probably doesn't take an hour and a half of you sitting there with one chip in your bag to say you're still eating your lunch. So, let's be realistic about it. Let's be pragmatic about it, and let's be safe. That's the number one thing. So, as far as City of Amity goes, I just really have this Friday is the big day. Santa comes to town. I'm really excited about that. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see my interview yesterday on Coin News, their show, but that was a fun thing for me. I haven't done that before, being interviewed by Coin. I've been interviewed for other stuff when we have emergencies and the city runs out of water and things like that, but not for a fun thing like this, getting ready for Santa coming to town. So we have that parade route posted on the city Facebook page and online, and really encourage people to come out, be in your family groups, socially distanced from other family groups along that parade route. You should be able to hear it because the firefighters and the police officers, they make lots of noise to let you know Santa's on his way. And then we'll have all the lights turned on the tree at City Hall and all that kind of stuff. And I do want to give a shout out and a thank you to Willamina City Manager, Kenna West. She worked to get the trees for not only Willamina, but Sheridan and Amity as well. Nice teamwork there. And so we got a nice, beautiful tree with a whole bunch of lights we're ready to turn on. So I think that's all I got, unless anybody has anything else for me.
I just want to say thank you so much for your diligence in getting food out to school kids. It's tremendous. I mean, we all have things that we do other than be on here, and I'm really glad that you do that. And you're going to continue doing that even after you're done being mayor.
Yes, my boss says I will, but really it's not me. I do the coordinating. It's the drivers that do the work that they have the impact. So, but yes, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that we get to Councillor Drabkin. I realize that I skipped over you as well. Is there anything more you'd like to share on behalf of the city?
No, I think things are fairly well covered. I did hear the mayor mention SROs earlier and wanting an update on that. That's just something that we're currently working on in the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force. This would be if the task force decides to move it forward, which would be taking it to council, this will essentially be a new product for our area, and the idea is it still encourages development and free market, but it's a lot more focused on micro housing and some types of shared living quarters. We have been doing a lot of work on it in affordable housing over the last couple months, a lot of research, and it's kind of come together with, we're going back and asking a couple more questions. We're currently looking at what ADA responsibilities or requirements we would or would not want to build into any code related to this type of product being something that would be available. We're highly aware that this is something we would want to encourage our development community to undertake. So we're being very thoughtful in the way we're moving forward, and if it's something the task force sends to council, which at this point looks like it will be, that would be coming probably in the next 2 months, and we're trying to make it fairly streamlined so that it would fold very easily into existing code, and it wouldn't be a heavily nuanced project to take on, that it would be pretty straightforward. So, but other than that, I'm good. Oh, and figure out where you're going to get takeout from this week, because last week won't cut it. Well, it just won't. We're going to start losing businesses really, if we just have to adapt our habits as well if we want to start, if we want to see some of these businesses survive. So pick a restaurant, or if you don't want to go out to eat, maybe it's a good holiday gift to give would be gift certificates to some local restaurants. All right, and I don't know, enjoy the rest of your day. Wear your mask.
Thank you, Councillor Drapigan. And seriously, people, if you can afford it, go out there and get a gift certificate or get some takeout. Our restaurants are very important to all of us, to our lives around here, I know. Economically, culturally, just to vitality of our lives. And we have some amazing people who run them and who work in them. Yeah, thank you. Takesha, what would you like to share with the community today? And thanks for your patience.
Yeah, I'll be really fast. I just want to say, we have a Santa on the Green Bridge and really nice lights. Yay! It took a lot of work, a lot of community support to pull that off, but it's just the start. This is the start that we'll be building from there. And also, just for any community members watching, we will have a combination of different groups are putting on events every week before Christmas. So safe, socially distanced events and whatnot. And in the bulletin board, there should be a spread this week with all the information about that.
Great, thank you very much. And I'd like to note that I've been trying to find a bridge in Yamhill County that the county maintains that we can name after our outgoing county engineer, county surveyor, and former public works director. And somebody said, "Oh, the Green Bridge," and I was like, "It's the Green Bridge. You can't call it the Bill Gilly Green Bridge." So, heads up. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'd also like to note that Steve Sugg joined us a little bit later, so I didn't do the whole introductions, but he is Dayton's relatively new Dayton School District Superintendent. So I think that he is still here with us if he would like to share anything from a school's perspective as well. And there is a bridge in Amity, but is it a county bridge? The one over Salt Creek is not, and both of them over Salt Creek. And welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you. No, I don't have anything to add. I've just been listening and working on other things. So, but yeah, we need people to wear their masks, socially distance, and clean their hands so we can get kids back in school. That would be my advice. I really want to see our kids back in school.
Yeah, here. Thank you very much. And welcome, even though it's a belated welcome. We're glad to have you at Dayton School District.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Are there any last thoughts? All right, I just want to note that we're moving from the statewide 2-week freeze to a new, I think it's called the risk-based approach to activity levels around county to county, starting December 3rd, which is Wednesday, right? I think it's December 3rd, either way, even if it's not Wednesday. And so there's new information for what that means for a county like ours, which is in the extreme risk category. And really what that means is that coronavirus is widespread in the community. So we do have a few more things that can happen, like outdoor dining. And I don't know of anybody who's going to take up the state on that in Yamhill County, but I hope that somebody does, because I'm happy to dine outdoors at your facility. And
Casey?
Yes.
Just to let everyone know that going onto the website of the Oregon Health Authority has that list of what activities are available in the 3 different categories.
Yes, that's a really good point. And Representative Noble, did you have something?
We're just going to add, I think there will be some shops, some places taking people up on some outdoor dining. And I want to throw this, it is an important part of our economy too in this county, is wine tastings will now be able to occur outdoors. And that's an industry that has greatly suffered. I'm sure Councillor Trevkin probably has a whole list of how that's impacted the wine industry. But that is also available now.
Councillor?
Only if you want me to expand. It is interrelated though with our restaurants, and restaurants and wineries work together. And I will say, taking off my council hat and putting on my wine hat, it is not only our direct to consumer traffic that's been impacted. We do have very reciprocal relationships with the hospitality industry, and of course, restaurants, hotels, all of it. We all do work together to create this experience of welcoming people and creating this wonderful culture, as you mentioned before, Commissioner, for those that live here, and so. Yeah, I think, like everybody, this is a difficult time, but the more you can shop local, whether that's for food, wine, or holiday gifts or whatever it is, but your downtowns need you a lot right now, and so do the people that aren't downtown. So do the farmers that we're delivering to the restaurants, including grape farmers.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a big ecosystem in our county, so I really appreciate you reminding us of that. Yeah. All right. Well, our county can get our case counts down, just like Superintendent Sug said. Wearing your mask, keeping your distance, keeping your hands washed, which is exactly what Councillor Yarnell Hallman told us 2 weeks ago to help hospitals like Providence. So the one thing I do want to note is I got an email while we were on this call that Yamhill County did lose another county resident to complications for coronavirus. So my heart goes out to their family and to their healthcare workers. From what I understand, it's very hard on healthcare workers these days, as they're the ones who often end up being the last person to say goodbye. So thank you very much, everybody who's joined us today. And we will be back here again next week. Jody Hansen from Remnant Initiatives will be talking about her perspective on Measure 110. So a lively conversation will ensue, and I'll mute if necessary. But we will see you next week, everybody. Thank you very much.